When you want to add some dimension to something, make it feel like it's more real or coming out from the background, adding a drop shadow is a really great layer style to go and try first. You can add a drop style to or a drop shadow style to a layer by double clicking on the layer itself, not where the word is, but off to the side, or by going to the layer menu, choosing layer style, and then choosing the style that you want to add. However, we've got a lot of layers here, and instead of adding styles to several of these layers, what we'll do is organize them into a folder or a group. To do this, you need to select all of the layers in your layer panel, and then you can either drag them down to the folder icon at the bottom or hit Command G, and that will group them into a folder. Now, groups are nice because you can just select the one group here in your layer panel and move things around or transform it. It's a way of grabbing lots of layers at once with just one click, but it's also a way that you can add a layer style to a whole group of things. So we will just double click here on the group folder and we'll add a drop shadow. Remember, to add a drop shadow you need to click on the actual word drop shadow if you want to edit its attributes. Remember that Photoshop's default styles aren't actually great. You have to mess with them a little bit to make it look better. The thing I usually start with is distance, because sometimes it's so close to that layer you can't even see the drop shadow. Once I've increased the distance, I usually will increase the size, which softens the outside edge of that and makes it a little more real. You'll notice if you look at something around you, if the object is really close to a wall, for example, the shadow is very crisp. But if it's a little further away, the shadow is a lot softer. So if you want it to look real, look at things around you and then try and adjust it to look like the real things. With a drop shadow, the other thing to be aware of is if your object or graphic has an imitation light source, such as the highlight indicating that there's a light above it, that the drop shadow should be going in the same direction as the light source. So the light's up here somewhere and coming down, so the drop shadow should also be going that same direction. In your drop shadow editor, you can change the angle of your drop shadow by clicking on this little circle and dragging, or by typing in a value. And with a straight above light, the value will be 90 degrees. I usually will also reduce the opacity. This setting can really change depending on what color your background is. If it's a white background, you really don't need a solid black shadow, but a soft one will work great. If you feel like it, you can even change the color of your drop shadow. And I'm just going to pick a blue from out of my object to give it just a hint of blue and call it OK. That's adding a drop shadow. To add a symbol or an icon on top of a graphic like this, it's easiest if you begin with an image that you find somewhere else, if it's not super simple. We'll go for both super simple and an image by going over to my internet browser, and I've already looked up the power symbol. So I'm going to copy this image over by right-clicking and choosing Copy Image. Go back to Photoshop and paste, Command V. So the shape I want to use is specifically just the area here that's white. I don't actually want to include the black areas for the graphic that I want. But because this is clearly defined as a shape, I can use one of my selection tools, such as the Magic Wand tool, to select just that area. So I've clicked on the first one, I'm holding Shift, and clicking on the second area, which will add that to my selection. Now I'm done with this layer. I can hide that away. That's how I use a layer or a graphic to create a selection. I create a new layer and choose whichever color I want, and then fill this graphic with that color by going to Edit, Fill, or using Option Delete on a Mac. And then I don't need my selection anymore, so I can get rid of it. Select, deselect, or Command D. grab my move tool, move it on over. And at this point it's just another layer full of pixels and you can do whatever you want to it. The layer style I would recommend doing for something like this is pulling up your layer style editor by double clicking on the layer and then choose Gradient Overlay and click on the word so you get the options to edit it. Now this gradient editor, when you open it, it should have any gradients that you've created and saved. So I actually have the gradient for this object and I've added it to here. Okay, and then just sizing it down and doing anything else you want to it to make it look awesome. Maybe a drop shadow. This is where it's fun. You just kind of get to play with things and see what looks cool. There we go. It's a really cool graphic. To finish preparing it for some application such as an internet use, what I usually will do is hide the background layer and then trim away all of the excess, which is a really simple thing. You go to the Image menu, down to Trim, check Transparent Pixels, and click OK.